I want to describe, because I've covered things in Chicago. I've covered things in East Chicago, Indiana, which is about half hour, 40 minutes from Chicago. And whether it's Chicago, or East Chicago, there is a pattern of cities and towns dumping their contaminated waste, toxins, lead, arsenic, essentially terrible environmental pollutants on communities that are poor and minorities. And that's what we're talking about today. So I'll just start. The other guests can join in a minute. So I came across this, Chuck, who's a high school science teacher, I believe, and Brianna, you're both from Chicago, and you and two others have been fighting the relocation of a scrap metal yard from General Iron. And if you know anything about scrap metal or General Iron, it is air pollution galore, amongst other toxins that have been emitted by them. And they want to relocate this to the southeast side of Chicago, which is not exactly where the wealthy live. So can you kind of talk about how did this plan come about, and why have you guys decided to start a hunger strike as a message to Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who has run, might I add, she ran as a progressive, but based on the activists I've spoken to, maybe has not governed as a progressive so much. So either one of you, you could start with how did this come about that they were going to relocate this scrapyard, their scrapyard location right in your community that's already been polluted?
Sure. So for a little added context to General Iron, I think we found that General Iron RMG is an Ohio-based company. We had an educational presentation on it yesterday. They've been open in Lincoln Park historically. I think it was I don't recall. Forgive me, I'll get the dates wrong, but it had been a long-standing member of the Lincoln Park community. And they had experienced a number of violations and citations from the city in their time there. And community members were able to rally. I believe the final straw was an explosion, an unscheduled explosion. They were able to rally and demand that the city force them to leave that community. They were heard. They had demonstrations. They got aldermanic support, and General Iron was booted out of that community. The Illinois EPA approved the permit. I believe it was early 2020. I don't recall the timeline as specifically as I should. And community members have been against it from the start. We've been demonstrating since the summer. There were socially distant protests going on that were incredibly organized by local activists who have been doing this work in the coalition to ban pet coke for years. This isn't, as you said, this isn't new to our community, to this community. This felt like the next best thing to escalate. We chose to sign up for this and put our bodies and health on the line. But this isn't just another escalation tactic in a long history of attempts to get the city to deny this permit.
And can you kind of talk about the other, in this area of Chicago, the other companies, corporations, environmental fights in terms of air polluters, water polluters that have been there, I mean, for decades, that poor people, minorities have had to suffer with?
So some additional context here. Thank you for like triggering us to like go back and look at what led up to this, Brianna. And I'll come back to that's a great question, Jordan. And so the story of Chicago is that if you're not familiar with Chicago, it's a really cool city that is intersected by a river. It's a natural river system. But it has been so like changed over time by the city. It's been channelized. The direction has reversed. So now we send our waste to like towards the Mississippi River instead of out into Lake Michigan. And historically, all along the river has been in like industrial corridor. all throughout the city because you can like ship things in and out. So there was a really powerful industrial corridor on the north side. And over time, the north side of Chicago has become very gentrified, has become very white, very upscale. And with that has come the pushing out of these industries on the north side. And one of the last remaining industries on the north side there, other than like there is one island that still serves as an industrial area, was this General Iron. And just north of it, there was $1 billion development that was being built. And that was part of like, in order to have this $1 billion development, we need to get rid of this industry, this dirty industry. And so the industry, the owners of that General Iron agreed to sell their operations to this operator that's already down on the east side of the city, southeast side. And what was interesting is that they were not going to go through with the sale, but the city actually signed an agreement with them saying they would do everything within their power to help make this transition happen. Once the city signed that, they gave their signed signature and their stamp of approval. Then RMG bought General Iron. And because down in the southeast side of the city, we have all of these brown fields that are left over from the shut down steel mills. So the easy way is to just like, let's continue to dump industry in here instead of beautifying the area and providing healthy jobs, green jobs, providing parks for people. And so right now in these brown fields, it's just like industry galore. And so you have RMG currently operating. They already shred metals and dangerous electronics. Across this river from them is another shredding operation. South of them is a international shipping terminal, Watco terminal, that is currently being monitored by the EPA for manganese emissions. North of them is Bell, SH Bell, that is being monitored for manganese emissions, and that is a dangerous neurotoxin. Between RMG and SH Bell is a giant pile of pet coke, which is the leftover remains from the oil petroleum processing industry, and they're just sitting there. And that was a big fight a number of years ago because that's blowing all throughout the neighborhood. And that doesn't even name them all. I mean, when I walk in some days when I'm in the school building, when we're actually in person, we have to shut the windows because we just smell this rancid air. And that's like, that's not cool.
So I want to ask, I guess, Yesenia, you could chime in. Can you kind of talk about this area of, it's kind of like southeast side, I believe, of Chicago? They want to relocate this scrap metal factory, which is going to increase the already polluted air in an area that's fairly poor, I would assume, heavy minority. Can you kind of talk about the demographics of this area?
Sure. I think geographically it's very interesting too, because half of our ward is like a little island that's connected by bridges, which is pretty interesting. And a lot of people in the city don't even know anything about the southeast side, because we're pretty much excluded aside from those bridges. The demographic, so we have like South Chicago, which is like connected to the city. And then we have the east side, which is connected by the bridges closer to the lake, split by the river. South Chicago specifically is our residents there predominantly Black and Latinx. Over 50% of our residents in South Chicago are Black. And 40% of the children that live in South Chicago live in poverty. On the east side, it's flipped. So 50% of residents on the east side are Latinx. It's more working class on the east side, but there are still families from immigrant descent that do have to deal with poverty too. So yeah, that's the majority of it. Resource-wise, it's been industrialized for years, since Republic Steel. There's been lack of mental health centers, lack of adequate health centers there. Our school buildings are crippling, some of them barely being repaired today after having to fight so long to just get, desks, books, holes in the ceiling to be repaired. So poor, working class neighborhood, immigrant descent, Black Latinx residents.
And might I add, I don't know if this was in this area, but as you're describing all of this decay, lack of investment, pollution, I believe it was Mayor Emanuel that put through a $95 million police academy in Chicago while all of this is going on. Is that correct?
He sure did.
Sorry to trigger you guys. We're having to bring up.
I mean,
good old Rom.
Story of our lives, you know. There's
Right.
triggers all around, and I guess that's the purpose of these systems, is to try and implement these, you know, different systematic oppressive facilities and policies and systems to basically, you know, continue to make us feel like no matter how much we organize, we can't have change. But, you know, clearly that's not true.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.